Good evening. Good evening. It is Sanaa, Chief Girlfriend at HR Girlfriends, and change of plans, but in HR, we know how to pivot. You may have seen some promotion for another guest, Crystal Richardson, who unfortunately took ill. But the power of an amazing network is that on a moment's notice, I was able to tap beautiful talent. And I have with me tonight Nicole Stewart. And I'm going to
Hi,
introduce
everyone.
Nicole and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Nicole. And then we're going to get more into the conversation. But if you're not familiar with what we were going to talk about tonight and you're joining us, we're talking about project management. And
Mhm.
originally the conversation was going to be touted towards, project management from an entrepreneurial standpoint. But all of my conversations today have pointed to the fact that we need to be talking about project management, COVID-19, and HR and human capital and what that looks like. Because a lot of us, as Nicole has been so gracious to remind me, have those skills. We just don't see it in the manner in which we should see it so that we can show up effectively and really work this because we're not even halfway through the crazy. We're just at the tip, the beginning. And so,
Yes.
yeah, without further ado, let me introduce Nicole and tell you a little bit about her. So, Nicole Stewart is an organizational business strategist and leader. She specializes in several areas: human capital management, HR management. She's worked as an implementation consultant. She's done leadership in higher ed, working around grants, administration, and writing. She's done nonprofit leadership, financial services, management, and the list goes on. She's OSHA certified. She is a lot of threat. And Nicole provides workplace assessments, valuations, private coaching, and training. And Nicole's input has been instrumental in the development of streamlined processes and improved outcomes. And she's a PMP. And that was really important because I wanted the HR Girlfriends community to hear from someone who is credentialed through life work experiences and letters behind their name to tell us all about this project management thing and how we're going to navigate COVID.
Listen, you know, I'm thankful for the additional PMP at the end of the name, but I'm much more thankful for all of the experiences that have led up to that. Um, in our earlier conversation, I had shared with you that I believe that all of us have had project management experience. We may not necessarily have attributed what we were doing to being a project and that we were managing a project in the workplace. I'm not even going to get started on how we've managed the projects of our families and raising our children. That's a entirely different conversation for another
Mhm.
day.
Grocery
But
shopping.
in Target is
Mhm.
a whole new thing. Another conversation too. But
I
anyway, I digress. When you are presented with someone comes up to you in leadership, for instance, and they say, hey, we want to start X, Y, and Z program. That's a project. And so for me, the first things that come to mind are a whole bunch of questions. So for anybody who knows me, they know I always have a notebook. They know I always have a purse full of colored pens. And I'm writing down the several questions that come to mind first in my trying to understand. Of course, you get those 5 tenets of when you first learn how to write in composition in school, that the who, what, why, where, when, and how. So
Mhm.
I'm actually crafting those questions and I'm trying to navigate myself toward getting to those answers. So again, that's how I'm starting the process of managing a project. So when you look at project management and the way that some people would have you believe that it exists in the mainstream, is that it kind of just sits within the composition of just engineers, for
Mhm.
instance, or people that work in construction. For you can be a project manager and manage projects in any personnel capacity. It just so happens that I utilize mine in the realm of human resources and human capital management.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because I've had that same dilemma when I'm thinking about, well, what exactly is my role around project management and what qualifies me. Now, I feel more secure because I've dived into the entrepreneurship realm. But even then, you think it has to be done in a manner in which you haven't been taught yet. There's got to be more to it. It has to be, right?
Hmm.
And I had this conversation this morning, Nicole, and I would love for you to weigh in. I run an HR virtual chat every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And the conversation was on managers managing remotely now.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
we are all ingrained, whether some of us can make the pivot and be more flexible, that if I can see you, then you're working, I'm happy, you're happy, life's good, and they can manage work output better from a psychological standpoint, knowing that they can see the person, knowing you can
Okay.
tap them anytime you want. You can go next door to the office if an idea scratches your head and you want to sort it through. Managers are struggling now with micromanaging, and they don't have necessarily, they haven't thought out how they're going to manage work output from people they can't see. And so talk to me a little bit about some of the basics that you think a manager would need to implement to sort of work through that with your with your project management experience.
Well, I think that it can be helpful and beneficial maybe to ease the manager's mind, uh, not necessarily putting time frames on particulars for a daily amount of output,
Mhm.
but maybe put together something that is throughout the intermittent space of the week or right before the end of the week, and identifying certain benchmarks that you want to see as an achievement, as a goal. So communicating those things in writing and actually reaching out to the member of your team and letting them know, these are the kinds of things that I would be looking for you to address in relation to this particular project. And then let's follow up and talk about that at the end of the week and make certain that all of the steps have been maintained, make sure all of the outcomes are measurable, as opposed to being a micromanager and calling every 5 minutes and, what are you doing and why did you stop to get a grilled cheese sandwich? It's, that's, you have to allow for there to be that sense of respect
Mhm.
between yourself and your team members, that they're going to be mature enough to handle the responsibility of working without direct oversight.
Correct.
So I think that one of the best ways to do that is to open up those lines of communication, but again, make it intermittent, not every day where you're barreling down the eardrums or the throats of someone. Just, hey, put it in writing. Let's talk about this step. Let's go back and make this a checklist. So the checklist can be something that's a valuable tool.
No, I think so, and I'm all about visuals, being a credential project manager and me on the entrepreneurial side, I have to use tools, and we could name a ton of them, right? Project management tools, they have tons of them out there now to visually see because I'm accustomed to remotely working with someone to build my website, to do different things. And HR typically, although we have some remote relationships, we are managing COVID outside of our departments. This is not
Correct.
about
Correct.
HR at all. I mean,
No.
and so talk to me a little bit because I think it's interesting, and I think others will think it's interesting around what you're doing right now with your current contract client around
Hmm.
COVID, because your current title is, which caught my eye, was a COVID remote operations specialist. So I want people to know what you are doing in this COVID space so that they can get ideas about how to navigate their processes.
Sure, sure. So what I've begun doing is trying to implement uh, much more direct input and then valuable output, and identifying how COVID is going to be impactful to the business overall.
Mhm.
Uh, how are we girding up the team? How are we preparing for recruitment if we need to do additional recruitment? How are we getting prepared to go back into the office space when that opportunity lends itself to us? How are we disseminating information and keeping people informed, but not progressively sending that message out and making them more fearful overall? How can we manage that in response to all of the panic that's happening around the world? And then at the same time, making certain that we're doing some self care. So you've got the leadership team that I'm reaching out to, a primary member of the leadership team in particular, and just following up with them. Here's what I think is going to be beneficial to communicate to the members of the team. Why don't you let me know? Do you agree? So asking for that input and making certain that we're on the same page about how we are communicating the messages surrounding COVID-19 and its impact on that organization.
Absolutely. And, as we have more of these return to work conversations, I think I would love to have a more of an in-depth talk about what kind of managing around return to work, right? So, like,
Yeah.
right. So it's like you have all these moving pieces. And how can an HR professional look at this and say, okay, my project is returning to work, returning my folks to work. How can they see it in the interim? And then how can they see that long term?
Because and I'm glad that you asked that, because today I had a thought, and it was more of a visualization to the workspace that we currently occupy,
Hmm.
and thinking of the proximity of how the seating is arranged
Hmm.
for each of the members of the team. Is it going to be necessary? Will the recommendation come down that we even implement the social distancing within the embodiment of that workspace? How can we best handle that? Will we need to reposition and move people to X, Y, and Z amount of space within the realm of what our workspace is? Are we going to now need to have additional stations set up for them to sanitize their hands? I know right before we left the office space, I set up a sanitation station, um, not realizing that it was going to become what it was going to become, but
Hmm.
just in identifying that there was potentially going to be something we needed to respond to, I said, well, here's something we can do so that maybe people can have their minds eased a little bit concerning this. Um, what I do think is going to be important is drafting out the plan, continuing to communicate with leadership, and then coming to a consensus. Again, utilizing the resources that we're going to begin, because each business is going to be different. Their needs are going to be different. I don't know that there's going to be a one size fits all uh, plan of attack, and actually how to put that plan together. But there is a way to put the plans together so that you can make sure that people can come back to work and that they can be safe.
That part. And, there's going to be so much out of our control, and as you're managing the return to work, that's the part that is going to be so critical is identifying what is in your control and what is out of your control. I think a lot of times in human capital space, we like to dip into things that we can't control. It's like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
dip
yeah.
there, whether it's by expectation,
Hmm.
whether it is by self-torture. So
Hmm.
talk to me about how you navigate some of those challenging times like COVID, with that being present of mind.
I like to make certain that I defer to what my experience has been,
Mhm.
and that I give credibility to what I think I know,
Mhm.
but I go and I research to find out what I don't know and see if what I don't know and what I think I know can either override or complement one another. And then I take that and present that to the individuals and or the team that I'm actually working with, because I want to bring them back something that I've actually processed, not just not just stuff that I'm just flying by night and just throwing things together. How is this going to be impactful to this person? Because I've got access to HR records. I may know some intricate details relating to some people that other people may not know. How can that information be impactful in how I'm going to give direction in relation to how we're going to plan for our reentry, how we're going to make certain that schedules can be accommodated. Are we going to even continue with a remote work policy, for instance, where it may be most beneficial for some individuals that may not necessarily need to be back in the office space? So, all of those variables have to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely. And, one thing I was thinking about is as you're managing the project of returning to work from COVID, right? Return to work feels so short term when you hear from all of the leading experts that there's going to be another outbreak, right? We may have a second or third wave. And so you may have a project that's going to be doing this rolling hill. And I would imagine because we haven't gotten there yet, but we've all been through challenges that you're going to feel like it's a setback, right? And so,
Right.
right. And so, how would you suggest we navigate that when we know that there potentially is a second wave coming? Once we're actually out of our homes and back into workspaces, what are some like best practices?
uh, Take a face mask with you into the workplace. Take your own set of gloves. Take your own sanitization products for yourself. Have those things readily available that are going to be at your own workspace. That's for the individuals. But at the same time, if you're working with an employer that really cares about the team of people that are in service with them, then, you know, maybe put together care packages and let them know, here's what we're going to provide for you so that we can let you know that we want you to be as safe as possible. uh, but you have to be willing to have those kinds of hard conversations with members of leadership. Uh, Sometimes they don't want to necessarily break down the fact that they could be devastatingly impacted by something like this. So we also, as HR reps, have to sometimes communicate those really, really tough messages, and have a thicker skin than everybody else, or look like we have a thicker skin than everybody else.
That part, and
Mhm.
it's really, really tough, and so, we have all of these multiple prong these multi-prong issues. We've got talent, we have physical workspace, policy, just so many moving parts, and what is your recommendation for someone who maybe is an HR department of one? Is it to not pretend you can do it all and go ahead and ask for some help? And what kind of help is it that they're actually asking for?
If you're making an assessment of what's in front of you and you're being realistic about you're not being able to answer questions that could potentially come up, or even the questions that are right in front of you, please do not hesitate to ask for help. Let a member of leadership know that you need to have someone else to, even if it's just as simple as assisting with drafting communication that you're going to share with the community of your team members, of the members of the staff.
Mhm.
Being able to bounce those ideas back and forth off of them, so that it's not just you in leadership all the time, that what you're bringing to them is a complete conversation with some additional input of thought. So No, don't ever be afraid to ask for help,
Right. And
ever.
one of the things that I thought of was, well, since we're probably not having Christmas parties or holiday festivities this year, maybe we can transfer that money into supporting HR. We got to start thinking like, look, reallocation of funds to support your help and resources.
Yeah. I think, Sana, that I have found in my experience through the years is that organizations have minimized what they viewed as the requirement for the roles of HR as just being the paper pushers, the people that make sure that the healthcare benefits are in place and that little Johnny can go to the dentist. And now I believe that they're going to be in the position to make that recognition that we are so much more and that our value is incalculable. And as a result of that, that they'll be reliant upon us so much more than they ever could have thought. So my hope is that any member of the HR community is, for lack of a better term, that they're girded up and they understand that all of that studying, all of that work that they were doing, all that reading, that it wasn't in vain. It's not going to
Mhm.
be something that's going to go to waste. Things are being stirred up within us that we're going to be in the position to actually be of service. Uh, my hope is that the organizations that have somewhat diminished their viewpoint of the importance of HR will not set themselves up to be on the back end and then they have their own organizational pandemics
Hmm.
because they would not take into account the things that we as professionals have been trying to help them with.
That is so interesting. And I love how you put that organizational pandemics, because you better believe it that if you're a return to work or you're navigating remote work, if you're not watchful, you can just implode an entire organization depending on its
Yeah,
size or entire departments,
yes.
and I know again this thing of with HR is like it's funny, right? I always joke that nobody calls us in when they're making big decisions, but we're always part of the cleanup team.
Yes,
Always part of
yes.
the cleanup team. It's like we don't need you to party plan, but can you put up the chairs and can you figure out why the DJ didn't come? And the party is now.
Yes, 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 yes.
It is
Yes,
crazy and yeah.
I've had those conversations more often than not, and you try to give that little bit of, hey, here's a gentle reminder of if you're
Mhm.
thinking of doing X, Y, and Z, make sure that we sit down and we talk about it before you do it so that we can see how it fits within the scope of this set of laws or this requirement, or is it something that we're going to be able to maintain our compliance as a result of these activities and these actions? So sometimes you're going to run into members of organizations, dependent upon where you work and where you're in service to, that they're just not going to take the responsibility for appreciating what we bring. But it doesn't mean that you stop bringing your best.
That part. And that's where where's where the rubber meets the road, right? It's you get to
Yes,
make decisions about how you show up. And remembering why you do the work you do, right? I
yes,
don't do it for leadership. I'm really here. I mean, yes, at the behest of, but I'm here for the employees. I'm here to make a difference in the way people work and their culture and how they operate,
exactly.
right? And you're here to do your part in this big scheme of things. It's very much like to me right now that everyone's talking about the hospital janitors and cleaners right now
Mm,
and how they are playing such an intricate role. Yes, doctors and nurses, absolutely. But if the cleanliness of the hospital is not in a sanitary condition, all of that work is for naught. If they are not in a position to prepare those areas, those tools for, this operation COVID, it would be a mess. And so just thinking about all of the layers and how we all play a part and not allowing management or leadership to minimize anyone's contribution to this project of
Yeah.
getting it going.
Yeah, you have to be the one. If you're not on the phone with leadership, then you're sending them the reminder email. You're shooting out the text message. Hey, don't forget to say thank you to X, Y, and Z person. Let's not forget that we want to give acknowledgement for this task that was completed. So, we are the ones who have placed ourselves in the position to give and to identify that value of human capital. So, because we are the ones that know the worth of the people that are doing the work, then
Mhm.
we have to remind leadership that you wouldn't have an organization, you won't have a business, you won't have a hospital without everybody doing their part. So I am so grateful that now people are actually making the recognition of those the people that are keeping the rooms clean, going in and they're still risking their own lives going into those rooms. You've got hospitals with whole floors, 12 people in the bed. You got seven of them
Mhm.
that are being affected by COVID-19. But then you've got a cleaner coming in behind them and doing that work. So the heads of those hospitals need to be thanking those people. They may not give everybody a $500 gift card to Amazon, but someone needs to say thank you so much for continuing to get up and to come in here and to help us be of service to everybody else. Every little bit helps.
Absolutely. I've been thinking of in these HR virtual chats I have twice a week, we've been talking about ideas to integrate that because even as part of your stay remote work process, now that we're all sort of settling in, it's writing a handwritten note. I don't care if you break up the employee list amongst your whole HR department and everybody take
Yes,
a
yes,
third and a third, get those handwritten notes out. There is something
yes,
about it, and get your CEO to write a few to some key people. Just I feel like what COVID is requiring of HR and leadership is to go back to a time, as they say, way, way back, when there was a more personal approach to how
yes,
we led, to how we cared for our staff,
yes.
and even, project management, because people get sold up in the bells and the whistles of systems and technology, but
Hmm.
that's really not what we're dealing with right now, except for the fact that
No.
we're doing virtual with Zoom. I got it. But the real core of how we're navigating this is just traditional communication, right? No more like just emailing isn't just enough. Maybe you need to hear your voice, see your
Yes,
face, all those
yes,
things.
yes. I had an instance earlier. There was an email communication that came over and a request, and I said instead of me sending four emails to try to get to the one answer, it was just a simple, "Hey, I'm going to give you a call." The 4 minutes on the phone saved 45 minutes of unnecessary back and forth, but it got to the bottom of what
Mhm.
was needed in that moment and probably saved a whole lot of money. So it's you sometimes you got to go with your gambler reference. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them,
Yeah.
and know when to walk away and know when to run. So it's being instinctive. And
Yes.
and sometimes that instinct comes as a result of the utilization and then the learning. And again, you've got this pool of skills, like I said, and sometimes you don't know when those skills are going to be necessary to be stirred up for those waters to be stirred. But I'm grateful that I knew enough to respond in that capacity because it really did save a lot of back and forth communication.
And that to me feels so fundamental, but we have gotten to a place, and I'm guilty, where I'll shoot the email before I make the call. And I'm having less of that now that I am affixed to the house. One,
Mhm.
connections and communication I'm yearning for because I don't have a choice, right? With
Yes,
choices, we tend to opt out.
yes,
Um,
yes.
and so I think that that's really powerful to consider. But I have a question for you as we start winding down this conversation. I know a lot of people in human capital and HR, they're always looking for ways to level up where they are. And you have such a
Mhm.
wealth of experience, and it looks like you've had a really nice career trajectory. Talk to me about the things you attribute in your HR career to getting to where you are, the philosophies that you now garner, the success you now have. What are some key things that people can take away from you?
I think that I don't think that I've achieved what I've actually set out to achieve for my long run. I do believe that my current experience and my past experience are stepping stones to where I would eventually like to actually go.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that I'm learning to identify what those experiences are. And again, like I told you before, I write down the questions. So I'm questioning myself on a regular basis. I just had a conversation last night with one of my dearest friends.
Mhm.
And in the conversation, you know how you have your girlfriend,
Mhm.
she's your sister, and she can identify and pinpoint those things that sometimes you're not willing to be honest with yourself about. And when she brought reference to this thing to my attention, I couldn't do anything but just tell her thank you. You know, that you've given me confirmation of what I need to do in identifying what my next steps are going to be, not because I'm dissatisfied with who I am, but because I recognize, and you've reminded me to recognize, that there's so much more for you to do. It doesn't mean for anyone in the community not to appreciate the skills that they're utilizing now, that the roles that they're fulfilling currently, but to also just be aware that sometimes you are required to do more and to move out of a particular space because somebody else needs to move up into that next space. So
Interesting.
for me, that's the place that I am in, getting prepared for moving into the next space because someone else needs to step into this next role. And my hope is that I can continue doing that and always making room for other people to make room for themselves, for their gifts to be used.
Ah, that speaks to my soul because that is how I like to operate. I believe in giving of yourself, but in order to give of yourself, you have to consider yourself first. I mean, in a healthy way, right? That means
Yes,
you have
yes,
a level of consciousness about how you operate in the world, how you're seen in the world, how you see others in the
yes.
world. And then once you get to a place where, things like all the money doesn't matter to you, that you have to
Mm,
pay bills, but you're not selling your soul for an extra 5 grand
yes,
because after
yes,
taxes, you'll be chasing the next one because that's not enough.
exactly.
And just trying to identify. And what I heard you say was it's really about taking time to reflect on what you want, answering those powerful questions, asking yourself those powerful questions, remaining open to others' feedback and how they see you. You don't see you the way others see you
No, no,
at all,
never, never,
but you don't
never.
want to.
I
I don't want a
no,
mirror.
no, No, I cannot tell you, now when I've ever seen myself the way that somebody else sees me. I just I can't.
Mhm.
And I won't say that that's a bad thing,
Right.
because I think that you get to, you don't get so stuck up in your head with, oh, well, I can do this and I can do that and da da da. Well, yeah,
Mhm.
I know about the things that I'm capable of doing, but it's not about those things. It's about, what am I doing that's a benefit to someone else? But when I'm putting the twist on there of, how can I do those things that can be beneficial to someone else, but that can be most impactful for me, for my right now, is what I'm trying to focus a little bit more on.
Absolutely. And I think too, you talked, and I just want to hit on something. You talked
Mm.
about not being at the ultimate location in your journey, right? For where you want your
Right.
career to
Right.
be. And for me, it that thing has morphed. I mean, the ultimate
Yeah.
location for me is not the same as it was a decade ago.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
being honest about that, right? Like, okay, so
Yes.
let's be honest here. I've moved the marker for those things, but yet I won't stop trying until I can no longer do so.
Yeah. I remember discovering uh, your profile, discovering your page, and just like, wow, wow, look at what she's done, and all of these people. That's fantastic. And just thinking, boy, I wonder what she had to do to get there.
Let me tell you, I'm a very transparent person. I have gone, let me tell you, one day I'm going to have the most, and I sort of tell the story in parts, but I want you to know that it always looks sexier on the outside. It always looks
Yes,
sexier on the
yes,
outside.
yes,
Let me tell you,
yes.
before our call right now, I'm laying on the bed, I'm watching HGTV, and all I could do is envision
Yes.
sleep because all I do is run my mouth all day. All day, all I am is wanted by someone for something. And those
Mm,
aren't bad things. Those are just things that deplete me
yes.
and so I always tell people this, I always say, look, I want you to promise me that if I spent time with you to tell you this thing, that you will repeat this thing to the next person so that they don't have to come back and ask me because you've told them the story of how I told you how to get it done from A to Z. That we have to feel a responsibility to one another, that we author each other. And that if you don't feel like you author that and that you want to hoard the mentoring, the knowledge, the advice I've given you, then shame on you, right? Like you need to
Yes.
give that.
Yes.
So that's what I spend my time doing. And this has morphed. All I wanted to do was hang out with HR women. I thought I was just going to go to a couple of happy hours and we were going to be just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then when you said that you had to find a way to not be so depleted because you're pouring out so much, um, let's be honest, in some of the environment presently, we have to be a little thankful for some of the reprieve of being able to lay on your bed, turn on that HGTV, watch Bobby Flay in his grilling competition, and just kind of vegetate, because all you're doing is pouring out to someone else. And again, like you said, it doesn't mean that you don't want to have something to pour out, but you got to give yourself something as well. So I woke up with that in mind, and that's why I allowed myself to have that chocolate chip cookie for breakfast. And
Right.
and I said, today, HR girlfriend, you're going to go and you're going to enjoy that cookie for breakfast, and then you'll pour out into the rest of the organization.
Well, and you know what? And there is a freedom and a permission that you need to give yourself. You mentioned self-care as part of this HR toolkit we need to navigate COVID. And that's the truth, is that if you don't find a way to feel less guilty about doing nothing, it's taken me a while, years, to feel
Hmm.
no issue with not being up and moving around. And I haven't said it a lot because I'm encountering a lot of people that are stressed out. So I'm trying to be supportive, but I have no problem being in my house. I have found the most beautiful joy in that. I don't have to move. Do you know how many thoughts I can
Mm,
actually collect
yes.
cohesively because I am stationary, because my body is still in so many respects? I just feel like so many things are coming together. And so instead of seeing it as this negative that I can't go out, well, first of all, let's look at the positives. I'm not spending my
Yeah.
money, so I'm conserving unintentionally for that vacation that we all will deserve when this is all over.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And the
But
one they will be taking.
yes,
Yes.
yes, but
Yes.
really and genuinely, I get to do things like one of my favorite things to do yesterday. One of my favorite life coaches is Iyanla Van Zant, and she does the antiviral talk of the day. And she was so amazing yesterday because she talked about the inner child in us, right?
Okay.
And she talked about our inner child and how that 5-year-old is always fighting for room in that life. 45, 55, your 5-year-old is always trying to find space. And you have to get perspective about the fact that all of you, including the 5-year-old, needs room so you can navigate this, right?
Yes.
When you
Yes.
fight all of you, when you fight all of you, then that's where the trouble comes in at. And just honoring what you were here to do. And some things I do are today is all I have. That's it. And I try to live for today. I plan for tomorrow. My calendar is full, but I think about today. I've had some really amazing people in my life. I love, let me tell you. So I want to tell people how you got on this chat tonight. So
Okay.
she started her day with a chocolate chip cookie, and she had no idea that she was releasing into the universe.
Mm-mm.
You basically said to the universe, I'm open. I'm eating this cookie today.
Yes.
My guest got sick at 4:30. I went into my network on LinkedIn. I said, who do I know first connection with a PMP? I had never had a conversation with Nicole Stewart a day in my life. I said, Nicole, are you free? If you are, life would be amazing for me. And then we end up being eternally grateful to each other. One, right?
Yes.
For being able to have this conversation tonight with you. This
Yes.
wasn't at all where I thought it was going to go. And this is the other thing about this COVID-19 recovery, your real life, your personal life. You have to remain open for the chocolate chip cookie, the email from Sanaa, everything. And you have to be
Yes.
ready and willing. I've had people tell me things like, no, not yet. I'm not ready. No, not yet. Let me tell you something. If somebody calls you, you say yes and you figure out how to do it later. You have to, right? Now, I'm not saying go pretend to be a lawyer. I didn't say that,
No, 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 no,
right?
no, no,
We
no,
don't want
no.
to get
No,
you
no,
in
no.
trouble. What I am
No. Mm-hmm.
saying, right? What I am saying is that the universe will serve you exactly what you need. Now, if you say no, if you look a gift horse in the mouth, right? And some cultures saying no when you are full is a problem. So whether you think you're full or not, you're hungry, sometimes you have to see things beyond just my hair today. Throw a wrap on. Listen, spritz it up. Do something. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean,
Yes.
but there's so
Yes.
many areas in our life and in our careers where we say we want more, but we're not positioning ourselves to want more. And you can't live in hindsight. Hindsight does not
No.
serve you.
And let me tell you, when you sent the invitation, I thought, if I miss this, it won't come around again. So I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to share what I know, and I'll be open to learning something new and making a new friend, and hopefully being a blessing to whoever has joined us this evening. I'm hoping that someone will take into account what they've done throughout their career, that they really take a look back on some of those work assignments and realize that those were projects,
Mm,
and that you were managing those projects. You just didn't know. Because when I remember sitting in my PMP classes, I remember sitting there looking at the instructor and hollering out, I've been doing that for 30 years. Going, and I didn't know that that was the name of it. That didn't have a name to it, but this counts for this, this counts for that. And I've been doing this and I've been doing that. And it, it all counts. It all adds up. So today is a culmination of it all adding up.
I'm telling you.
And the euphoria of the richness of my chocolate from my chocolate chip cookies this morning for breakfast has manifested all of this fantasticness for right now.
That's the
And I
story we're
am
rolling
grateful.
with. Yes, it is. That's
That's
the
the
one
one we're gonna stick with.
we have gotten some really great comments that I want to share with you, Nicole, because I think that Joan Smith says, she found her own do mess and all. So she's figuring out her life with
Yes.
COVID. And so she said, someone asked, any suggestions for how to recognize staff who held the org down and those who continue to work remotely?
Okay. You deferring to me?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Hey, create a Zoom meeting, invite everybody, all the members of the staff, and then point out one or two of their specific contributions and give the acknowledgement and allow for everybody else to kind of pour into them. Turn it into we've had a couple of Zoom meetings where they've either been morning coffees or they've been an afternoon after five cocktail kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So turn it into that. It's a way to connect and then just openly thank people, because then you may have someone that's a part of your remote work team that turns around and they say, well, oh wow, I didn't realize someone was actually paying attention to what we're doing. Maybe their productivity will change.
Absolutely. There's something about being valued. And how many times have we said to a friend or a family member, it's not even the money. It's not even the money, right? Like
Yes,
that's our go-to state.
yes,
It's not even the
yes,
money, it's the principle. And so what's good for you and what works for you will more than likely work for many that you're serving in your
yes,
organization. So it's not about the money. I mean, I'm all about this. You want to talk about employer branding? Listen, what happened to the public live stream? Bring
yes,
that person
yes,
on, do a public recognition, tell them ahead of time, we want you to dress nicely. But there is
yes.
something right from the neck up, from the waist up. So, I mean, but there's something amazing about showing someone that you care. And you don't have to be fancy, right? Like, you don't have to be
No,
fancy about it.
no.
I saw
I mean, right
someone.
now everybody's being so budget conscious too, Sana. So again, the verbal acknowledgement may really be satisfying at this
Mhm.
particular point in stage. And then once you get back into your office environments, maybe you add a little trinket here and there. But just for someone to say to you, I just want to thank you for what you did.
Yeah.
Just thank you. Me, I'm a crybaby. So you tell me thank you in front of all the rest of the staff. They're pouring.
Right, right.
I mean, I'm doing it because that's what I do and how I do. But for someone to acknowledge it, you know, you feel grateful because of that. So please let your staff members know that you are grateful for what they're doing. There is nothing easy about navigating through COVID-19.
Nothing. And don't pretend like you've been here before.
Nope, nope,
The
there is nothing easy.
perfectionism will kill you because you haven't been here before.
No, no, at all. At all. I mean, I can read historical references to what happened in the 1918 pandemic and even maybe make some parallels. And if I really wanted to get and dig deep, I could do some analysis and run a couple of Excel spreadsheets and come up with some numbers. But this is brand new. This is 2020.
Mm.
I haven't been around that long. So, or long enough to be able to give a first bird's eye account of what was going on in 1918, but I can see right here what's happening. Like, this is nothing like what happened in 9/11, for instance. You
Mm-mm.
know, this is this is invisible. We can't see this virus.
Nope.
So, but what we can see is the impact that it's having. And as a result of that, we try to stay as grounded as we can. And if the necessitation is that we continue to work remotely for a bit of an extended period of time, then hopefully people can say, yes, I'm going to acknowledge that I will continue to abide by that, because it'll be protective not only for myself, but so that when we come out of this, we can be much wiser, hopefully much healthier, and at some point, much wealthier.
Listen, we can all say that that's a plan of action. I'm
Mhm.
curious. So, is your bestie Christina Young? Do you know that person?
That's one. Yeah, that's my sis.
Hi,
Hi, boo.
Christina.
Hi, boo.
Oh my goodness. Listen, in the community and spirit of girlfriendhood, right? Like I love it. Because
That's
the
my
truth,
boo.
oh, that's awesome. I think this is
We've
so
been best
true.
friends since freshman year of high school.
Oh my gosh. So I have one of those too. And the odd thing about us is that we're 13 days apart and we're fall under the same sign and we're the same age. So I have one of those too. But what I love about being in this HR girlfriends community, because I don't take credit for what it's become. I've just facilitated. This has become a place where you can find someone, your HR soul sister or your HR confidant or
Yes.
someone that can lead you. And you don't have to take anyone home, but you can. I know lots of people would love to go home with you, break bread with you, but just
Yes.
being able to support each other in these times in a very humanistic way is what this is about.
And Chris is more than my friend. She's my sister. And I don't know if my other sister has joined in or not. She may have had an online class because she's still in school right now, in pursuit of a higher level degree herself.
Nice.
And her name is Angel Planner. I don't know if she's on there as well. But she and I have been friends our entire lives. So Chris and I
Wow.
are only 34 days apart in birth, and Angel and I are only 6 months and 2 days apart in age. So I'm just so grateful for all of what we have endured professionally and personally. And it's just, I get so much from them that I can pour that out onto all my new HR girlfriends.
I know, and I feel that. Like, honestly, I don't I'm inside this conversation, but you couldn't tell that I had never talked to you before 15 minutes before we started. You couldn't tell that. And that's genuine, right? Like, I mean, genuine
Yes.
curiosity and interest and the other and wanting to see communication be effective is like awesome. So as we close out, Kimberly Hartman has a question. I've heard
Sure.
of PMP certification, but don't know much about it. Could you elaborate on the certification and how beneficial it would be for an HR professional?
Well, I think that the benefit of obtaining a PMP, again, I had referenced it a little bit earlier, is something that can be beneficial across any professional capacity, whatever your professional enterprise is. How it can be most effective as a human resources manager, is what I've been able to do now, is to focus most of those skills in navigating through COVID-19. Prior to that, navigating through assisting with managing a bunch of youths that were looking for employment for summer programs. So putting those kinds of impactful programs together, taking a look at what you believe may be your specialty area as far as your human resources career, and maybe focusing on the projects that you are actually working on more often than others, can be a good point of reference for why you're going to identify what the value of obtaining your PMP will be for you, and how it will position you to project your career moving forward.
Absolutely. I think, for me, when I see the PMP on an HR professional like yourself, Nicole, what that says to me is, oh, they understand processes. They get the end to end and they understand what it's going to take, whether I put a project in front of you that's HR related or not, or if you have a role as HR in a bigger project, you get it. You can probably walk this for others who are not guided. So, um,
Yeah.
for me, like I have a coaching certification. And for me, I just wanted to be much better at what I thought was coaching. And I was correct. I was not coaching. I was telling, advising, giving therapy, instructing. And so now that I've learned how to do that, I ask better questions. I show up much better. I actually listen differently than I used to.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
those are things that you couldn't account for until you actually endeavor on that. Um,
Yes.
so I'm glad that you're able to explain that to her. One last PMP question, and then we are out of here. I know you can't get enough of Nicole. I know because you see me all the time. So this is not about me. Um, do you know any good online programs that offer PMP?
You know what's funny? We're talking online, but my favorite way of learning is face to face. But now that we're in a new era, like we've
Mhm.
been talking about, so now a new era of learning, I think that you may want to check with the PMI Institute
Okay.
as the primary resource that I would refer you to, and see if they're now going to reconstruct some of their offerings so that they will fit within an online profile. PMI
Absolutely.
Institute.
PMI Institute, everybody, if you're interested.
Hmm.
And I used to work in government contracting as a director of HR, and lots of our guys had PMPs. And in fact, we required them of several senior level folks so that we could position them correctly in the government as we were coming in as contractors. So there is no shortage of resources. And some people, listen, you may go for the education and not sit for the certification. There's no
Right, right.
reduction in value if you don't
No,
go
there is not.
after it. So
No.
consider that too.
Or you may want to pick it up again later
Yeah,
and still, say, well, you know what, I went through the training, and so now let me go on back and get this certification happening and moving forward. So there's there's a lot to you determining what's going to be valuable for your personal development. It's not about what you're presenting to the employer. It's about
mhm.
you, because I've always believed in education, and I always believed that no matter what, somebody may decide they don't like me tomorrow, but you can't take away from me what I know.
All right. No, that makes perfect sense. So I don't know if
They'll
this
they'll
is her.
take your job away from you, but they can't take
Can't
away
take
from
away
me what I know.
education, right?
Yes, that's
So
right. No, no, no.
my last comment is, and listen, and I don't even know if this is her real name, and if it is, I'm here for you. Chichita Bonita. Um, it says great information. Thank you very much. She's a new HR manager. So Nicole, the fanfare has been about you. I would just assume because they see me all the time. So you have brought so much value to us tonight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it,
Y-
and thank you for my chocolate chip cookies this morning, Lord.
I know, right? Listen, so look, we have to do this again, and we definitely need to bring you back on just to talk more about your process
Sure.
in this COVID return to work. And let's keep helping the HR Girlfriends community get better.
Yeah, let's all keep getting better together, and stay
Yeah.
safe, everybody.
Please stay safe. Thank you so much.
Don't have your daughter calling you like mine is calling me all the time, making sure I got my gloves on.
Listen, my mother said today, I have to go to the pharmacy. I was like, are you kidding me? They don't do delivery. So look, I digress. Thank you so much again, Nicole. I
Thank you,
appreciate you. Good
ladies.
night, everybody. You'll see us at the next live. Take care.
Good night.
Good
Bye bye now.
night.